I speaking with, please?
Medea Benjamin, one of the co-founders of Code Pink.
Tell us about your journey since you founded Code Pink.
Oh my God, it's been a wild ride. We started Code Pink before the war in Iraq began, thinking naively perhaps that we could stop the war. And after organizing a 4-month fast in front of the White House, and George Bush ignored the thousands of people out in the street and went to war anyway, we started upping our activism. We've been to Iraq 6 times now. We have been organizing all over the country. We have about 250 Code Pink groups around the country. And most recently, we started a Washington, D.C. Code Pink house where women and men come from all over the country to go every day to the Capitol, to the Senate, to the House, to be putting pressure on our representatives and say, the people have spoken, now it's time to listen, stop the funding for the war, bring the troops home.
Code Pink has its own particular style. How would you describe that?
I would describe our style as creative, colorful, in your face, and yet with a little bit of a soft tone as well. So it's kind of a jiu-jitsu kind of thing, like they never quite know what we're doing, where we're coming in, how we're going out. Keep them guessing.
You yourself are a pretty controversial figure. You're aware of that?
No, I actually don't know anything about that.
What is it that you suppose that people who are critical of you and the organization, what makes them critical?
Well, certainly people who want to have the United States live in a state of perpetual war might be critical of our efforts to try to bring peace. Certainly people who support George Bush, and that's a small minority at this time, I might add, maybe only 26% of the population of this country, they might be critical of our desire not only to impeach George Bush, but to see him behind bars. And perhaps people who like to see our soldiers killed every day in a senseless war might be critical of what we're doing. Perhaps people who have no empathy for the Iraqi people might be critical of what we're doing. But I would say that moral, sane, compassionate, kind people are or should be supporters of Code Pink.
To what extent would you say that the change in public attitude towards the war is due to efforts of people like yourself and your group?
Unfortunately, I think the biggest change in attitude is because our soldiers are being killed every day and because the resistance in Iraq is growing stronger. But in addition to that, it certainly has to do with the education that has not been provided by the mass media in this country or by our elected officials, but by the peace movement itself. The fact that groups like Code Pink have been going around the country. I mean, I'm just one person, and I've been in hundreds and hundreds of cities around this country for the last 4.5 years, constantly trying to inspire people to not only change their opinions about this war, but to get actively involved. And I have to think that all of the work of all of us peacemakers has had an impact and helped change public opinion in this country.
What is the question that you wish interviewers would ask you that they usually don't ask you?
I wish they would ask why we think it is that the Congress is so behind in catching up with the sentiment of the American people.
If someone asked you that question, what would you answer?
I would say because the people who are against this war aren't doing enough to make their voices heard. I would say that if there are now at least 60% of the people who say the troops should be coming home by the end of the year, if every one of them did one thing, made one call to their congressperson, 202-224-4121, made one call and said to their congressperson, we voted you in to get us out of this war in Iraq, I think we'd be out of Iraq a lot sooner. And of course, if you're willing to do something more than just make a phone call, then you could be writing a letter to the editor. You could be signing up on the codepinkalert.org listserv so that every week you would get a good suggestion of something you could do. If every one of us did one thing more, I think we'd be out of Iraq a lot sooner, and that would mean less people dying.